Hi guys! I'm doing this video on architecture through the ages. Let's have some fun. Throughout history, architecture has become more and more advanced. It is amazing to observe the intricacies of the architects and carpenters' work. Not to mention, architecture is so important when we learn about humanities. New philosophies, merging religions, and different art forms collaborate to make elegant structures. For this video, I'm going to focus on the style of architecture and its evolution through the early and Middle Ages. From the Carolingian to Romanesque to Gothic style. Let's talk about the Carolingian style. A little background. The Byzantine era occurred between 330 and 1453. It evolved from the Greeks, and this type of architecture, along with many other different forms, was prevalent from late antiquity to the early ages. By the 700s, a new culture was emerging in the outer regions of the former Roman Empire. Around 1800, the ruler Charlemagne brought Europe together through Christianity and created a renaissance in learning and the arts. This change of hearts led to what scholars call the Carolingian Renaissance. Carolingian art and ideas were borrowed from ancient Rome and the still reigning Byzantine emperors. So this introduces us to the Carolingian style architecture, which is derived from the Byzantine style. The Carolingian style is very elegant and bold. Many sections of these structures are octagonally shaped with towering domes. And from the outside, the features cascade and draw attention to the craftsmanship. Very large stones were used to create Byzantine-style masterpieces, along with durable, large piers for support. Now let's talk about the Carolingian style from the inside. The arch is a crucial element to the structures throughout the ages. Developed from the Roman architects, the arch was used for more daring construction. Because in an arch, the stones are compressed and not bent, it can bear more weight than the average post and lintel. The barrel vault could bear tremendous weight and was often used as a structural support in the building's foundations. And the dome created a spacious and majestic interior space. The clerestory is an important feature from the Carolingian era. The arched windows allow natural light to seep in from above. It is much symbolic of the direction of our lives, to constantly be looking up towards God. The aisle is a place for gathering and worship. Aisles are used for chapels, with rows of pews lining the aisleway. Looking at this picture of the inside of the chapel of Charlemagne, there's really something to be said regarding the arched windows and doorways featured in this Carolingian style. The domed appearance is not only aesthetically beautiful and elegant, but it is structurally more difficult to build and requires a different method of support. The octagonal dome shape is one of the reasons why I love the Byzantine style. These masterpieces were created in abundance during this time, and the artists were not deterred by the structural feats. Now we're going to talk about the Romanesque style. So around 1900, here's a little background. The Ottonians, which were the powerful Saxon rulers, made a huge impact on Germany and Charlemagne's new-founded Renaissance. They promoted their claim to Charlemagne's imperial legacy and revived the old traditions and founded the new churches. So at the same time, the Western Reformation of the monastic churches pushed into Cluny, France. And so you have it, the Romanesque style was born by these two occasions. In our book, I quote, as one commentator remarked, it was as if Christendom were newly clothed in white mantle of churches. And I love that quote because it's a really similar style that we've seen from the past, but they just throw the white coat over and it's like a brand new style. We refer to this style as Romanesque because it stems from Roman architecture ideas, such as the rounded arch and barrel vault. Romanesque churches were the first medieval European buildings to rival the buildings of Imperial Rome in both size and beauty. Ottonian ambitions also fostered a new style in sacred architecture characterized by massive walls and piers and rich sculpture and fresco decoration. On the inside of the Romanesque style, the fashion of ancient Rome was demonstrated through sculptures. In this picture, we are looking at Narthex's door in the Church of Madeleine in France. Our book states that Romanesque sculptures appealed to the believer's imagination with vivid storytelling and an inventive visual style. Mystical events and grotesque beasts adorn the passages through which pilgrims walked, no doubt craning their necks at these wonders. The semicircular space above the door, also known as the tympanum, depicted the main sculptural theme that was shown throughout the church. The decorative moldings that frame the arch are called the archivolts. They were designed to symbolize many things. For example, sometimes they symbolized changing of seasons, or zodiac signs which represented God being in control of all time and space. The trumeau was the space between the doors, usually a post which was a spot for other life-size sculptures to rest. At the Church of Madeleine in France, this appears to be the top of a column where you can see the sculpture of Moses and St. Paul grinding corn. The inside of these Romanesque churches are so detail-oriented, which is something our current churches don't bear today. There's a lot of rich stories told throughout these European churches. Now we have arrived to my favorite style, the Gothic style. The Gothic style encompasses more than just the architecture itself. It was a massive movement throughout the late Middle Ages that began the snowball effect for growing cities and towns. The movement is known as the Gothic Awakening, after the artistic style that it stimulated and supported. Abbot Suger first designed this type of architecture in hopes of emphasizing light into these massive structures. And the light did shine through. And it beautifully symbolized Suger's idea of God's spiritual being. Suger believed that God revealed himself through the material world, and the study of those material possessions allowed God's truth to be understood. The Gothic style is similar to the Romanesque style. However, the framework is directed around soaring lines that make you look up towards the sky. Its structural elements, such as the pointed arch, ribbed vaulting, and external buttresses all help create this lanky look. Like we see in the picture of the Chartres Cathedral in France, the Gothic ribs and arches were both decorative and functional. The Gothic style seen in this picture, the ribs and arches made the worldly heights of around 377 feet possible. The massive heights of these churches also aided as an aesthetic metaphor for the orderliness of God's world. I really like this illustration of the differences between Romanesque style and Gothic style. The rounded arches of the Romanesque style in figure A and B were limited in width and height. Vaults of pointed arches in figure C and D could span a wider, rectangular bay while rising to a uniform height. The biggest differences between Gothic and Romanesque styles can be seen from the inside. The nave arcade is formed by weight-bearing piers. The visible structure of the nave interior represented the beauty and proportion of God's creation of the cosmos, a visible manifestation of divine truth. Above the arcade sits the triforium. The triforium is the arcaded wall passage that faces the nave of the church, and the tall clerestory windows usually rested over the triforium. This is where the famous stained glass windows come into play. Unlike a Romanesque church, where massive stone walls lined the inside, the Gothic style features soaring lines and an impeccable light that shines through the multicolored windows. Our book describes the stained glass like this. The windows represented quite literally the Word of God. Each one depicted a biblical story, the life of a saint, or a principle of church doctrine. A Gothic cathedral's windows therefore created a visual Bible of the poor, instructing the illiterate citizens and pilgrims who worshiped there. In this first picture, we see at the center of the rows are Mary and the Christ child, surrounded by angels and Old Testament kings. In the second picture, we see Christ's royal ancestry, almost like his family tree. Thanks for listening, guys. I really enjoyed learning about the architecture through the ages, and I hope you did too.